Welcome to the art and science of complex sales. This is the Leadership Quarter. This is a podcast for revenue, sales, and go-to-market leaders and practitioners that is focused on bringing you insights from the best and brightest the world has to offer. The Leadership Quarter is focused on asking the critical questions. How do we develop and empower sales leaders to build strong cultures and teams to hit our growth goals? Experts from around the world give their experiences and opinions on this critical aspect of sales. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow on your favorite podcast platform. And let's dive into introducing today's guests. A sales leader that oversaw and led 40x growth in revenue and saw their business going from a small niche player to market domination. That is Neal Glatt. But there's so much more. Neal is a genuine and committed person focused on the success of others. He's currently living into his mission of driving multiplicative growth across people and companies through his fractional sales leadership business. He's committed to continual growth mindset, driving learning through education and application in a continual way. Neal shares his lessons he learned along the way from a sales leadership, diving into the power of individuality and strengths, building trust, and creating a sales culture that performs. Let's get started today with Neal Glatt. Neal, my man, welcome. How are you doing?
Very good. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate you having me on.
I'm really pumped that you were able to come on. I think we have a lot to talk about. I know we have a lot to talk about. And we met, it's over a year ago now.
Yeah, just about.
Yeah.
At a sales conference, as we do, right? And just started talking, and I don't know, we have some, I think, similar journeys, similar passions and beliefs, and I don't know, felt like I hit it off with you. So when you offered the podcast, I was like, I'm not even going to charge you, Paul. I'd love to be on.
Well, that was kind of you. I didn't charge you either for coming out, which is, we have this beautiful, just mutual relationship of just fresh. No, and I think your story, and just to preview this for everybody, Neal has an awesome story relative to the sales leadership and diving in, and sales leadership in the trades, not something that we normally associate with high revenue, high impact. Well, right. That not a lot of people, but it should be associated with high revenue, high impact, high potential. And we're going to dive into that. First thing I have to ask you to do, though, is, Neal Glatt, what is sales to you? Define sales.
You know, sales is so many things, but I think the goal of selling, right, is to really figure out exactly what somebody needs and then deliver on it in the most compelling way, potentially ever. And that's what gets me excited about salesmanship on a daily basis for my whole life.
Boom. And we're going to take it right from there. And I'm not even going to analyze that definition, because we don't need to. We're going to take it right from there, and we're going to talk about your whole life, because I want to get to this story of you getting into sales. How did you get into sales?
So I think the first time that I was like really consciously aware that I loved selling and was in sales is when I was 13. I sold more popcorn than anybody else in my county for Boy Scouts, right? And people laugh like it's this dumb thing I did. I got college scholarships because I sold so much popcorn, right? Let alone the fact all my extracurriculars, camping trips and equipment was all paid for with gift cards and troop money and stuff. I mean, really, in like a couple week period, I sold several $1,000s worth of popcorn, and I loved every day of it. Waking up at 7 a.m. and knocking on doors, and people in their bathrobes pissed off that I was there. And I'm like, come on, man, I'm out here. Because I knew they're going to run into 12 other kids in the next 2 weeks. I got to get there first. Right. And so that for me, that was where I cut my teeth on sales, and all I ever wanted to do was sell. I went to school. I got a degree in marketing and one in Spanish, and tried to get a sales job, and I graduated in 2009, and I couldn't get a sales job, right? Like, nobody's going to hire an unexperienced kid when everybody's unemployed, and you can get these mid-career professionals for the same money, right? For the same opportunities. So I landed a job offer with a janitorial sales company and a landscape company. And I ended up taking the one with the landscape company. And we're selling $20 lawn cuts in the Detroit area. We were selling, small brick paver patios and tree work and snow removal. that's what I ended up doing was working in the trades. I worked there for a year. I enjoyed it. And then what I found was I really, really liked the snow removal side, and I didn't really care for the landscaping side. And I grew up in LA, so maybe snow removal was just this novelty, right? But it was also an adrenaline rush. It was a necessary thing, right? And people, your northern listeners will know that there are people out there removing snow to keep everything safe. And we felt like we were kind of like a fire department where we were out there saving lives, but every single customer needed service at the exact same time, right? So our service level agreements would be like, start plowing within 3 inches or within 3 hours of a 1 inch accumulation of snow, times thousands of locations. And the requirement to perform was really, really high and difficult and fun and challenging. And I got introduced in 2010 to these guys out in Boston who only wanted to do snow removal. And that is still kind of unique, but back then it was unheard of. And it made sense to me because I'm not a plant person. Like I can't do the plant science. I can't name, all the horticulture stuff that a lot smarter than me can do. And so it sounded great. So I moved out to Boston. I was the third employee of this company, and the company was a fourth generation company, but the owner, who I worked for, Jay, had bought out this division. And so really we just had one pickup truck. Several generations of operational knowledge, but no real notoriety. Jay, who owned it, smart guy. He was probably like 30 at the time. I was 22. And then from his father's company, as part of this buyout, Jason had taken Bill, who was our CFO, and more senior, very, very smart financial guy. And that was the team. And I started selling, and I didn't know what to do, right? So first thing I told Jason was hire me a sales coach, and he did. And I owe a lot to my sales coach, Kirk. Started selling, started to have some success, grew from about $1 million in revenue to about $5 million over the course of a couple of years.
So let me come back you up there for a second.
Yep.
Were you driving the truck? Like literally you're selling, there's 3 guys in the company. Are you selling, getting out there plowing as well?
I was given a truck for a couple of weeks, and really quickly Jay was like, we're going to get you a car and you're going to stay in the office. So no, I didn't plow. We had subcontractors. We had some people who worked for us seasonally, but Jay knew the field. He was out there all the time too. Jay could do both. And I could just sell, and I could manage people, right? So operationally, I'd be dispatching and doing that kind of stuff. But we had other people out there, thankfully.
So this is a small margin, high impact, high energy, less than $1 million company that you're driving to. You just said $5 million over the course of a couple of years. Yeah. So we grew pretty rapidly, and we just found like we could understand, what we always said was we're wearing work shirts and work boots, right? And so we can bridge this white collar and blue collar business in a way that nobody else can. And that was really meaningful for customers. We saw that there were great selling organizations who had no operational ability, and tons of great operators who had no sales ability. And we could kind of combine them. And in the 2010s, there was a lot of new technology. There was a lot of need for reporting and communication. And we were on the bleeding edge of that technology and customer service type of side. And that's really what sort of set us apart. And so, we scaled really fast. And then in 2013, I had my worst sales year ever, confoundingly. It didn't make any sense to me. I called my coach. He hooked me up with an objective management group assessment. It said, you're pretty good at sales, but you don't have any strong, meaningful goals. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he goes, well, what's your goal? And I said, my goal is to make more than $100,000 a year. And he said, did you do that? And I said, yeah. I was 24 years old. I made more than $100,000 a year. And he goes, well, that was your goal, you dummy. You need a new one, or you'll never sell again.
So I set some bigger goals, and then we went from 5 million to more than 40 million by 2017.
Wow.
So the science behind objective management, I lived it out. And when we talk about, why is the will to sell so important and goal setting so important, like I lived that, man. In 2017, I went through a transition. I was surprised by a divorce that was pretty life altering for me, and it made me question a lot of things. And also, we had really struggled through. Every year, we had a whole new operating model because we were just in a whole nother, like size of business. Where it was like, oh, that model doesn't even work anymore for this complexity. Once we crossed 40 million, we felt like we had set operationally kind of the template that could carry us for a long time. And I went from being someone who I felt like is very impactful as part of this leadership team to, in a lot of ways, just back to the sales guy, right? Mm-hmm. There just was nothing new to invent. And I love ideation and all that stuff. And so between the combination of those two things, I sort of felt like it was an opportunity to explore a little bit in my career. Yeah. And it came to the conclusion that coaching and leadership was what I wanted to do, and for other companies, and told that to my boss. And to Jay's credit, he goes, "Man, I know exactly where you're at." He goes, "I was in the same place, same age that you are when I bought this division from my dad." And he goes, you feel like you are running out on your family, but also like you have this opportunity that you can't ignore. And I was like, oh, that's exactly what I feel like, man. And he just looked at me and he goes, "You have to go try it." And he said, all I ask is that if you decide you don't like it, you just pick up the phone and call me and come back.
Wow.
And that was the encouragement and send off. And you want to talk about like sales leadership that I needed. For me, that culminated what he understood about it and gave me not just the blessing, but also the confidence to go try it. Right. Because I got to a point where I could make that decision and tell him, but until he told me that, I didn't necessarily believe that, it's the permission to fail that you have to have. Right. Mm-hmm. And when you're talking about your own business, your own livelihood, that's next level, right? There's no, forget salary versus commission or compensation, right? It's like, I'm trying to start my own brand. Nobody even knows what's going on. So anyway, ended up giving him 6 months notice and building on a nice transition plan, start my own business. And since 2017, I've been speaking and coaching and training on the executive leadership side, but also on salesmanship. And man, it's been an awesome journey. So those are kind of the two halves of my career. Met you at the Objective Management Group conference because I found myself in a sales management function, and I'm like, I need this report that I had for myself, way back when, mm-hmm. and ended up becoming a partner with them. And now I serve as a fractional sales manager for a number of companies, as well as doing sales hiring and executive coaching for companies.
It's a amazing journey, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, is because it's an amazing journey. And when we talk about sales, you're talking about a needed, absolute critical industry in a trades, and those learnings from 1 to 40 million, like crazy. There's millions of them. You could probably tell me, we could talk about this for years, but what are some of the critical learnings from 1 to 40 million that you take about leading and growing a diverse sales team?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that we saw with a small team, right? So like, to put this into context for people, when we were at 1 million, we had 3 full-time year-round employees. We were at 40 million, we had like 60 or something, right? So that was kind of the range of teams I saw. And the executive leadership team went from 3 up to about 6, right towards the end. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I really noticed was, the 3 of us, after a year I'd been there, we had Katie who came on. She was like the 4th member of that team. The 4 of us had this intrinsic trust and knowledge of each other's strengths. And like, we played as a team. I mean, I tell people, yeah, I never once did an estimate or sold a deal without the involvement of at least one, if not two other people. Like, what? Like it was always a team sale, right? And to grow at that level, we were sort of in the business of like convincing a client we could handle something that we never had any concept of how to handle, getting the contract, and then figuring out how to do it. And we were like, we got good at that. But what really enabled that success was this trust of each other, right? So like, I didn't know how we were going to solve the problem, but I knew for sure the guy across from the table from me who had complementary strengths was going to be there all night long helping me do it. And literally that's what we did. I mean, we were solving problems at 2-3 in the morning when it was snowing, right? And so we had this commitment to each other and this trust in each other, knowing that when it got harder than we could possibly imagine, we were going to see it through together, whatever that took. When we grew and we started to add other people to that team, it's not that they weren't talented or that we didn't trust each other, but they didn't have those same experiences. And so I would come back with a sales opportunity. So there is no type of contractor segment that I've not done snow removal operations and sales for, except for airside operations at airports. I've never managed the snow removal on the secure side around jets and airport, right? And I came back with the request for proposal from an airport one time. I treated it like anything else we hadn't done, which is we're going to go try and get this job and then figure it out, right? And it caused a lot of internal friction. And we sort of set up at this table, and it was like several of us who had been there for a long time saying, yeah, let's try it. And then several of us who had only been there for a couple of years being like, what are you talking about? That's not what we do at all. Right. And it was just that, oh, you don't know that that's how we work. And it's not like you can just tell someone, don't worry about it. Right. Like they signed on, they're executive, like this is their career now. And you're trying to tell them you want to do something wildly different because you happen to trust your own abilities and your team's abilities. And it was like, there was a lot of benefit to adding those people, but it also dramatically changed the momentum and how you had to work. And I think that we underestimate that change. You always look at somebody coming on with positive intent and additive. Of course you should, right? But you have to be realistic about the fact that it takes a while to get to the same point. And I asked a mentor about this later, you know, who has an experience of coming into organizations in leadership. You go, George, you're spending time with these new teams. Like that's been your career. You go work with someone for 3 years or 5 years or 7 years, and you have these great results. When you first start, how long does it take you to get to the point of producing as a team? And he goes, probably a year. Now I asked him if I'm 29 years old. I'm like, a year? Right? It was a year to spend building a team. I'm over here. I've only been working for 7, 8, 9 years at this point. He goes, I don't think you can get shortcut anymore. Like you can get stuff done, but to really build that intrinsic trust is a year. And like, I've really seen that. Right. So fortunately, I think there's some ways with some assessments and some insights where you can really shortcut a little bit of some of that. But man, the second year I'm working with somebody versus the first year is just night and day every time. So it's not that you can't get results, right? Like I'll come in, I'll work with someone as a fractional sales leader, and I'm only asking them for a 6-month commitment. So I'm trying to take them, 20-30% sales increase within 6 months. And we can do that kind of technical training. But if I really want to change the direction of a company on a leadership perspective, that's a year 2 project.
So let's talk about the how then, because you mentioned a couple really interesting things there. We know trust is a huge part of that. We know shared vision, shared goals is a big part. Shared experience is a big part. How do you coach people? How do you work with people to start to gain that early on and really dive in with people? Yeah,
they have to believe that you're there for the right reasons, right? So what I tell someone is, listen, I know that your boss hired me, and that's nice, but frankly, I'm not accountable to them for what we talk about, right? So they're interested in some results, and I try really hard, Paul, to only work with people who actually care about their people. That helps a lot. But when I hit that right, when I judge the business owner the right way, they can lend some trust to me, right? And then I make it clear that what we talk about is fully confidential. I'm never going to report what we talk about in our sales coaching one-on-ones. And I have this goal of increasing company sales, but outside of that, I have a lot of leeway. So what are your goals, right? And I'm not content when someone tells me what they want to make. I want to understand, sure, where you want to go in your career and your financial goals. But let's talk about your family. Let's talk about your relationships. Let's talk about your physical health, right? And I'm trying to build something really holistic for someone. And so I think the first time when I can talk with someone about those goals right away, it starts to send the message that, okay, maybe there's something more here. They don't trust me yet, right? But if this guy wasn't being, showing up with integrity and really for me, then why the hell would he care whether I'm eating healthy and working out, right? And so when we can build that out, a lot of times salespeople just want to talk about, here's the calls I'm going to make, here's the deals I'm going to close. I go, well, how many hours a week is that going to take, right? Like, what's the parameter for that goal? Because we always assume there's certain parameters, right? The company is setting some profitability goals or pricing goals, and then there's probably a lot of never really talked about, but ethical goals, right? About what you'll do or say or how you present. So there's all these ground rules, but very few sales leaders, I think, are always saying, well, how many hours a week do you expect that to take? Right. And most people's understanding is, well, from a full-time worker, it's a full-time gig, but hey, that could be 35 or 45 or 55 or 65 hours. And Neal cares, right? I'm not okay with you spending 55 hours consistently, even if you're used to doing it, right? Not your pay rate, not the same pay rate as everybody else. So like my goal for you, to be honest, is like you get your family time and you get your workout time and you get your friend time and you get your community time, and that we accomplish these goals without spending all this extra time, because it'd be so easy to be like, why don't you just put in an extra 10 hours and you'll hit it. And so when we start to boil it down like that, I end up asking most of my people for like 3 or 4 hours a day of really consistent effort. We go, all right, let's look at your behaviors and let's look at your outcomes. And hey, man, you got to make 300 calls a week to hit what you want to hit. I go, oh, that's a lot of calls. Okay, well, you work 5 days a week, right? Well, yeah. Okay, that's 60 calls a day. Okay. How many calls can you make in 1 hour? 15 or 20? All right, look, just show up at 8 and work really hard until noon and make that happen. And then you have some appointments you have to take and manage around those. But I don't really care about your afternoons, right? Like, go be home with the kids, go get your workout in, go do whatever you want to do in life. I don't really care. Like, all I need from you is to show up really well for like 4 hours. And people, they've never had that kind of coaching before, right? And so we can really start with looking at the whole person. I think it shortcuts some of it. And then if you're using a tool like Objective Management Group or Membrane, right? And you're being really efficient with there's no discovery anymore, right? There's no manual stuff. Like you can leverage technology, you can leverage the science, you can leverage these insights where I don't have to waste time. I just start implementing this stuff. And we cut through all the nonsense really quickly.
But you used 2 words there that I think are tremendously important in your like the thesis that we talked about earlier, right? Is but you gotta it's trust, right? Yeah. That ability to impact trust and intent and integrity, and communicating those through action early and often. Yeah, that's one of the things that I find. That I find a lot in market is those 2 things are missing in a sales leader. And this is not I'm not trying to bash anybody's character. That's not what I'm trying to do. But in a sales leader that is only motivated by the number, it's harder. It is much harder to come to have that true intent and that integrity of, I am here to help you grow. And actually my actions commit and back up the fact that I am here to help you grow. Like,
yeah. I set a couple of ground rules when I decided to coach in this fractional manner. Right. And one was, I'm not going to work on any sort of shared financial effort. You need to have a goal that's big enough to justify my big expense. Right. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to work really hard for you for a short period of time based on the fee that you pay. I also set that fee big enough where I'm not charging by the hour and people have access to me all the time. So personally, I find video chats to be kind of subconsciously taxing. And so I only limit myself to a few hours a day. So if I ask that, I do the same thing I ask, which is, hey, if I've got an 8-hour day of work, I'm only going to spend 3 hours one-on-one coaching live because it's really taxing and I need to be super present there. And then I need to be available for people to call me after their meetings and debrief, just like if they had a full-time sales manager, right? Mm-hmm. So like all sales managers, I'm limited to about 15 people I can one-on-one coach. And then the other thing is I only do it for 6 months at a time. So I really don't think that any less than 6 months can we get any real results, right? Like when I've tried it for 4 months, it just doesn't work. It's brutal. The first 2 months, I mean, what a losing proposition, right? Like 0 results. Mm-hmm. 4 months, you start to see some opportunities. In 6 months, hopefully there's some big ROI. We can usually get that. But from day one, my goal is in 6 months, I'm gone. And sometimes they're small teams and they decide, you know what, this is super good. It makes sense. We're going to keep it around forever on a fractional basis. Like, fine. But my goal is not to be a consultant who just latches onto a company and then never leaves. My goal is to teach somebody something, have an impact, and inspire them to carry on those servant leadership goals or efforts forever beyond me. Mm-hmm. So I can go work with someone new, right? Like that's how my impact has been viewed. And it used to be, I want this to be huge. I want the biggest company. And like we were the third largest company in North America doing snow removal and the only one in the top 3 that had our own people on the ground, right? So like we did that. Now my effort is, I still want to change the world. I still want to have the biggest single impact, but maybe that's only for one person at a time.
Multiplication strategy.
A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And then you're showing up today the same way you showed up at OMG, the same way I've talked with you every other time, which is just bringing just you to the table, you, the history, and always trying to get better with them. So tell me a little bit about your coaching one-on-one. So you're diving in with reps. You're focusing on their goals, on how they work. How long does it take to usually get some really good, sustained progress with reps once you really start to dig in with them?
It depends on how much they have intrinsically, right? That sales DNA we talk about, that will to sell. We can usually, if they have a weak will to sell, and it's something we can fix with like goal setting, we can do that pretty quick. We go through one goal setting session. They reflect on it for a week. They come back. We hold them accountable to filling it in and making it meaningful. And then we test it the third week. So sometimes we can see a big change within 3-4 weeks. Mm-hmm. When it's behavioral and technical based, that tends to take 2 or 3 months to teach them those skills and get them to repeat them. And then if they're on the weak side, we could go 6 months and really only see some progress, which is why, as a coach, my first thing to do is to assess and never to coach without it so that I know what I'm promising for ROI. And I've had people go through 6 months because, it's not like somebody scores weak and we fire them, right? And we've taken a team, somebody's been around for 20 years. They've never really been a salesperson. They've done the selling though for the company. And you want to keep them in the loop and you don't want to make them feel like they're not part of the team. So I coach them, right? Mm-hmm. And then as soon as that's over, it's right back to like nothing ever happened, right? So I don't know that we can't do transformational sustainability change in selling for every single person. It's more about, hey, can I see an opportunity to really change something here? Normally, the people who have the best success are really strong will to sell, pretty strong sales DNA, new to the field, first time salespeople, or mediocre skills. Maybe they transferred from a totally different industry. And then again, 2, 3, 4 months, get them really dialed in, organized, new CRM, all that stuff, and get the behaviors down. That can be a skill for life, right?
Yeah.
And you can see somebody who, I got someone right now who's doubled their book of business within 4 months of coaching. They did it again in the 4 months we haven't coached, and now we're starting coaching again. And it's like, this might be sustainable, this doubling, right? So that's cool stuff.
That's fantastic. And then when do you find that you're coaching? When do you find, we talked about this a little bit, but your coaching takes when it gets that, it's kind of transformed into this, we now have a sustainable self-leading sales culture, right?
Yeah.
How long does that take?
Well, I think everybody needs a coach, and I have a coach, right? And so that need for coaching never goes away, but for sure, the need for me to be the one coaching them goes away. And again, technology, like what you guys are rolling out, really enables that, right? We can make a sales process that is reinforced through technology. I mean, 8 times an hour. If there's 8 different leads, right? 10 times an hour, that becomes so ingrained that if you build it really right and you hold them accountable within a few months, that's just how they work. And, a lot of times when someone's not taking up a CRM as a salesperson, it's because it's mandated by the company, but nobody ever thought about the value they're going to get out of it. Right. So I'll hold the salesperson super accountable to the program, so long as the company lets me make it super useful to them. And when they start rolling up to meetings and they can't remember anything, but they can pull up a pipeline and it tells everything that they need, well, then we never go away from it, right? Now they sleep easy at night because they're not trying to remember what they have to do tomorrow, because it's just membrane shows you. Like, that's amazing, right? And so those kinds of tools and process and let's write this down so we don't have to worry about it kind of mentality really means within 6 months we can move away from someone forcing you to do everything. Like the system can take over that day-to-day management, that sales help, right?
Yeah, I always say it's a combination of 3 things: talent, technology, and then transformation, which is what you drive like on a day-to-day, right? Coaching, leadership, just digging in with people. I mean,
so somebody goes, well, I'll run their sales meeting, right? Well, what are you going to do? Because we don't even know what to do. Dude, I'm not doing anything all that amazing, right? The first 15 minutes of my 1 hour sales meeting is, first of all, we're all going to share a piece of good news. We're going to take 5 minutes. We're all going to go around the table. We're going to share something positive about us personally and professionally. 1 minute apiece. Next 10 minutes, everybody is going to alternate weeks, and somebody's going to do a presentation on something they learned from sales. Because my expectation is you're a salesperson, you're listening to podcasts like this, you're watching videos on YouTube, you're reading blogs. I don't care where you're learning, but you're learning every week, right? And so, Paul, it's your week, 10 minutes. Tell us something you learned. This isn't a formal presentation. This is just, here's what I read. I'm prepared for it. And then we discuss. And it's like, I don't even talk for the first 15 minutes of the 1 hour I'm getting paid to facilitate. Right. And the template's always the same. And then it's like, oh, we know how to do this. We know how to have our own sales meeting. And so a lot of times I'll be retained as a fractional manager and I won't even attend the sales meeting anymore. Right. It's for the team. It's not for me.
Yeah.
So why would I sit through that and charge somebody for that time? Right. Let them run it themselves, teach each other. You talk about transformation. That's the self-sufficiency, right? So when you can gift individuals that kind of environment, a learning environment where they're challenging each other, get some leaderboards in there, we haven't talked about strengths, and I don't know if we have time to, but you get people comfortable using their own individual strengths for how to go about selling, and they can peer learn on that front. Like, well, that's fun, right? That's really that level of, okay, I'm not really doing much anymore. Yeah, we have technical help. We're bouncing ideas off of stuff, but really we're a peer group now, and I'm showing up with some more experience, some more creativity. And then my sales leadership is really looking at the bigger picture, right? So, hey, here's what we did. What can we realistically do, right? And how are we going to accomplish that? I was just talking with someone before this call, a coachee. Last year, one particular service group did $774,000. Okay, well, we're going to raise prices. That's going to get us to 826, and we're going to do these things to get us to 1.4 million, right? And so that's the, is this a reasonable plan? Because I'm the one kind of dreaming it up with the ownership now to hit those goals. Or do we need a separate service line? Do we need a new service? Do we need a new market? Do we need to cross-sell, right? That's kind of the idea. So,
well, we have talked, let's go back and focus on, let's end up today with a discussion on strengths, because I think that's something I definitely want to dive into. I'd love to have you back on too, to talk about the planning and the numbers. And you also did some amazing research that once that goes live, I want to absolutely have you on to discuss. But I had a moment the other day it was so life-giving. It was so cool. I was just pumped. It was on our weekly sales meeting. And one of the more experienced guys on the Swedish side, because we're Sweden, and then everywhere else we're HQs in Sweden. But he turns to the team. We're all on Zoom. He's like, "Well, guys, I just want to let you know, I really am impressed by what you're all bringing to the table these days. Like, I'm blown away, and I'm really impressed with it." And I didn't ask him to say that. I didn't know it was coming out of anywhere. It was just completely out of nowhere. He goes, "I'm just really impressed with it. I'm thankful to be a part of this team." And when you were talking about that strengths and peer group, that was the feeling. It's like everybody was diving in and bringing the best of them to this team. Like, how do you focus a lot on strengths with people? How do you look at that and help them drive that peer group?
So I'm a Gallup certified strengths coach. That was the arena I was working in before I got working into sales enablement, right? I just couldn't stay away from sales because I love it so much. The philosophy there, or really the science that's been proven over 7 decades, is that we're at our best as a coworker and as an individual. We're having our best success when we focus on what we're great at rather than where we're not talented, right? Mm-hmm. And so the idea is to look at what is your natural pattern of thought, feeling, or behavior, and how could you translate that into a strength, something that can be productively applied for near perfect performance. And we see that in sales, right? So I am hyper competitive, hyper achievement focused, love to get things done, cross them off a list. I like having lots of ideas. I like significance. I like making a big impact. And I like taking charge and creating areas of disagreement. So when I sold, that's how I sold. Clients would call in. They would have a problem. I'd call them back immediately. I'd put out that fire. I'd go to every trade show. I'd know every product and solution. I'd roll that out, even if we'd never done it before. I was constantly challenging clients on what they believed and often doing that to get as big of a client as I could, right? So I took a wallet share from, $120,000 a year to more than $5 million a year from one particular client. That was always how I approached sales. And if there was any sort of KPI, I wanted year over year performance, and I wanted to be the number one on the leaderboard, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was how I sold. And as a result, I tended to be highly knowledgeable about our products and services and provide really good solutions in customer service. I never entertained a client. Like, if we were at a trade show together, drinking at a bar, I'd pick up the tab. But not a single time did I ever take a client out to lunch or dinner unless somebody else prompted me to. It's just not my style. And there was a guy who I sold with for a while who had equal sales success, but he kind of knew nothing about our product or service, right? But he would take clients golfing and out to dinner, and he knew about their dog and their dog's surgery that they had today, and like highly relational, right?
Yeah.
And so even though you could look at one or the other of us and be like, oh yeah, typical salesperson, the reality is, you know what? There are people in sales who are really, really good, who just don't fit the mold or who got there in their own way. And in fact, if we actually studied it, we would see everybody's entirely unique in that combination of ways, right? And you can have that highly intellectual salesperson who really thinks on ideas and is deliberative, but still is the best in their office, right? And in fact, when you go to these conferences, you sit around, like these sales guys might get along with each other because they have corporate cards backing the evening maybe or something, right? Mm-hmm. But you walk away thinking, oh, we're similar, but we're different too. And so the strengths idea is, hey, can we put some actual language to that? Can we actually categorize all of these different components and dive rather into the how, which we have, right? Like everybody has the same sales process of figure out the budget, get with the decision maker, discover why they'd want to buy from you, qualify, propose, right? Close. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we all have to do that. That's the process of selling. But how are you going to do that? How are you going to meet the decision maker? How are you going to ask the right questions? That is a strengths-based conversation. And I'll often tell people, I live outside Boston, right? So I'm very comfortable. Plus, I have this personality of disagreeable and take charge, right? And I'll often say in my sales coaching, listen, you got to say this, or I would say that. And then I will be self-aware enough to say, but you are in Minnesota, and I know you're all too Midwest nice to say that. So let's figure out how you're going to say that, right? Mm-hmm. You have to ask for the referral. You have to figure out the budget. But how are you going to do it based on your personality? Well, that's entirely unique. And so that's where my coaching really, I think, comes to life for people. Talk about sustainable. Yeah, mm-hmm. we can push a salesperson into being uncomfortable enough to try something once, but not every time, right? And so that strengths-based is that consistent, near-perfect performance. And I really think that there needs to be more of an appreciation for the individual in front of you when we're a sales manager or sales leader about how is your behavior. I won't say personality because we think it's more nuanced than that, but how are your intrinsic behaviors going to show up within our sales process in a unique way?
Well, Neal, we're going to close it on that because I think that's a great spot to close it. It leaves a little bit of cliffhanger for the next time that we talk. I think we can dive a lot into strengths. We could dive a lot into process and your research. Well, as soon as that comes out, I will make sure that I can help out getting that out because I think it's going to be awesome. But any final, how do people get in touch with you if they want to get in touch with Neal Glatt?
Sure, plenty of ways. NealGlatt.com, LinkedIn is something I'm on all the time. Not a lot of Neal Glatts out there, so I should pop up pretty quickly for you. And yeah, either of those options, I'll have all my contact info and happy to chat with you guys via email, text, or call.
Awesome. Where are you focused right now? Are you still focused mainly in the trades?
Yeah, I do a lot in the trades. I have a client who's also DOD and, whoever else I happen to get referred to. So, I would say small teams that are looking to massively transform their sales are who I'm most excited about working with. And if they happen to be in the trades, I understand that world really well, but I've worked with people who do exotic frog breeding and wineries too, and you name it. So there's so many industries out there. I try not to be too prejudiced against any of them.
That would be an interesting combo business, exotic wine frog breeding. All right. Well, we'll leave it at that. With that, everybody, we will say keep shining bright. Thank you so much, Neal, for coming on the Art and Science of Complex Sales. And please reach out to Neal if you have any questions. You can always find me as well on LinkedIn. And I look forward to talking to y'all next time. We'll see you. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Art and Science of Complex Sales. Please take a moment, like, subscribe, share this podcast on all your favorite platforms, and let's get the word out. This podcast is proud to be brought to you by Membrane.com. We are the world's top B2B sales platform. And in the world of B2B sales, with everything from prospecting to business acquisition to managing complex growth, Membrane has the right size technology for your sales team. Our latest innovation, the Coaching Cockpit, empowers your leaders, managers, and team with the information and tools they need to take their skills to the next level and to take advantage of the exponential power of effective sales coaching. With our technology and the top team of sales partners around the world, Membrane is helping to achieve our driving vision. This is, quite simply, elevating the sales profession. To learn more, find us at www.membrane.com. That is membrain.com, or contact us via email at sales@membrane.com. Keep shining bright and have a wonderful day.